Welcome, weary traveler, to the echoes of the fallen realm, where epic tales become lullabies for the soul. Tonight, we walk through the royal gardens of Lordaeron at twilight's gentle end, following King Terenas as he tends the flowers of memory and watches children play where heroes once stood. Close your eyes and let the peaceful whispers of growing things and distant laughter guide you into dreams of renewal and eternal hope. In the golden hour when day surrenders softly to the embrace of evening, the royal gardens of Lordaeron bloomed with a beauty that spoke not of conquest or glory, but of the patient work of healing that follows every storm. Here, where the ancient stones of the palace caught and held the last warm rays of the setting sun, King Terenas Menethil walked among paths that had been replanted with flowers chosen not for their grandeur, but for their meaning, each bloom a living testament to the hope that survives even the darkest night. The war was over. The great threat that had hung like a shadow over the Alliance kingdoms finally lifted, but the deeper work of restoration had only begun. In these gardens, where courtiers had once strolled in peacetime splendor, where diplomats had negotiated treaties beneath ancient oaks, where royal children had played in simpler days, there now grew something new and precious. A living memorial to all who had given their lives so that others might know peace. The king moved slowly along the graveled paths, his footsteps making soft sounds that were quickly absorbed by the earth that had been turned and tended with loving care. His royal robes, normally worn for ceremony and state occasions, had been set aside in favor of simple clothes that would not show the soil from kneeling among the flower beds, or the green stains from tending young plants that needed guidance to grow strong and true. Each section of the garden told a different story, marked not by grand monuments or imposing statues, but by the gentle presence of flowers that had been chosen for their symbolic meaning and their ability to provide comfort to those who came seeking solace in the beauty of growing things. Here were the roses that bloomed in memory of the fallen heroes, their red petals like drops of courage crystallized into eternal beauty. Their thorns reminders that even the most precious gifts often come with sacrifice. There were the white lilies that marked the spaces where the innocent had perished, their pure faces turned toward heaven like prayers made visible, their fragrance carrying messages of hope to any who paused to breathe deeply of their blessing. Between them grew forget-me-nots in shades of blue that matched the sky at dawn, tiny flowers that spoke with quiet voices of the importance of remembering, of holding precious the memories of those whose lives had been cut short in service of the greater good. Golden marigolds caught the last light of day and threw it back in warm cascades that painted the garden paths with liquid sunshine, their cheerful faces speaking of the joy that remains possible even after great sorrow, their hardy nature a reminder that life finds a way to flourish, even in soil that has been watered with tears. Lavender grew in neat rows near the garden's edge, its purple spikes releasing fragrances that calmed troubled hearts and brought peaceful sleep to minds that might otherwise be haunted by memories too painful to bear alone. The king paused beside a fountain that had been restored after being damaged in the early days of the war, its carved stone figures now weathered into expressions of gentle serenity rather than martial pride. The water that flowed from its heights fell in a gentle cascade that sang soft songs of renewal and cleansing, its voice joining with the evening breeze to create a natural symphony that spoke of healing and hope. Around the fountain's base, new plants had been set in careful arrangements that would bloom in sequence throughout the growing season, ensuring that there would always be fresh beauty for those who came seeking comfort in this sanctuary of peace. Children from the city had helped with the planting, their small hands learning the patient work of nurturing life while their hearts absorbed lessons about the importance of tending to the future, with the same care that heroes had shown in protecting the present. Even now, as the day drew toward its close, the sound of children's laughter could be heard echoing from other parts of the garden, where young ones played games that had been passed down through generations, their joy a living testament to the success of those who had fought and died to preserve the possibility of such innocent happiness. Their voices carried on the evening air like bird songs, bright notes of delight that spoke of a world where play was once again possible, where the future could be embraced without fear. King Terenas smiled as he listened to their merriment, remembering his own children at that age, the way they had run through these same paths with the boundless energy that only the young possess, their laughter then a source of personal joy rather than the precious gift to an entire kingdom that such sounds represented now. The war had taken much from them all, but it had also taught them to treasure the simple blessings that might otherwise have been taken for granted. A group of war veterans sat on benches that had been placed at intervals throughout the garden, men and women who bore the visible and invisible scars of service, but who found in this place of beauty a balm for wounds that went deeper than any physician could reach. They spoke quietly among themselves, sharing memories that could only be understood by those who had walked similar paths, their words gentle and healing as they helped each other carry burdens that were too heavy for any single soul to bear alone. Some tended small plots that had been given to their care, finding in the work of cultivation a way to channel their need to serve into something constructive and life-giving. Their hands, which had once wielded weapons in defense of their homeland, now coaxed new life from soil that had been enriched with the ashes of the fallen, creating beauty from grief and hope from loss in ways that no grand ceremony could achieve. The gardeners who maintained this sanctuary moved among the plantings with the quiet efficiency of those who understood that their work was more than mere landscaping. They were artists of memory and craftsmen of healing, their skilled hands creating living works of art that would grow and change with the seasons, while always maintaining their essential message of renewal and hope. Master Gardener Elizabeth Whitmore, who had overseen the garden's transformation from a place of formal ceremony to this sanctuary of healing, walked the paths each evening to ensure that every plant was receiving the care it needed to flourish. Her weathered hands held the wisdom of decades spent coaxing life from reluctant soil, and her keen eyes could spot the first signs of disease or distress in her botanical charges before anyone else would notice that something was amiss. She had worked closely with the king in selecting the plants that would populate each section of the memorial garden, researching not only their symbolic meanings, but also their practical requirements for soil, water, and light. Every choice had been made with careful consideration for how the garden would look, not just in its first season, but in years to come, as the plants matured and the living memorial evolved into something even more beautiful than what they had originally envisioned. The paths themselves had been designed to encourage contemplation and reflection, winding gently through the various sections so that visitors would naturally slow their pace and allow the garden's peaceful influence to work upon their spirits. Benches had been placed at carefully chosen intervals, positioned to take advantage of the most beautiful views, while also providing quiet spots where the grieving could sit in solitude with their memories. Near the garden's heart stood an ancient oak that had survived the war's damage, its massive trunk bearing scars from shrapnel and fire, but its canopy full and green with new growth that spoke of the tree's determination to continue reaching toward the light. Beneath its spreading branches, a circle of stones marked a gathering place where memorial services were held on significant dates, where the names of the fallen were read aloud and their sacrifices honored with the dignity they deserved. Children often played in this area during their visits, drawn by some instinct they could not name to the place where the boundary between memory and hope was thinnest. They would run among the stones in games of their own devising, their innocent presence serving to remind all who observed them that the purpose of remembrance was not to remain trapped in the past, but to ensure that the future would be worthy of those who had died to make it possible. The king often found himself watching these young ones at play, seeing in their carefree joy the vindication of every sacrifice that had been made in the name of peace. Their laughter was the sound of victory more complete than anyone on any battlefield, for it represented the achievement of the only goal that truly mattered, the preservation of a world where innocence could flourish and hope could take root in hearts that had learned to trust in tomorrow. As evening deepened and the garden began to settle into the peaceful quiet of approaching night, the king made his way to a secluded alcove where a special memorial had been created for those whose names were known only to God, the countless souls who had perished far from home, with no one to mark their passing or tend their graves. Here, a simple stone altar held an eternal flame that burned day and night, its light a promise that no sacrifice would be forgotten, no heroism would go unrecognized, no love would be lost to the darkness of oblivion. The flame danced gently in its crystal housing, its light playing across the faces of the flowers that surrounded the memorial in ever-changing patterns of gold and shadow. The king knelt before this altar as he did each evening, offering prayers not just for the unknown dead, but for all who carried the burden of survival, all who struggled to build something beautiful from the ruins of conflict, all who dared to hope that the future might be better than the past. His prayers were simple and heartfelt, free of the formal language of state ceremonies and courtly protocol. Here, in this place where artifice had no power and only truth could take root and grow, he spoke to the divine presence that watched over his kingdom with the voice of a man who had learned that the greatest strength often lay in acknowledging one's need for guidance beyond mortal understanding. Around him, the garden settled deeper into the peaceful rhythms of nightfall, As nocturnal flowers began to open their petals to catch the first starlight, and night-blooming jasmine released its intoxicating fragrance into air that had been warmed by the day's sun and would carry its blessing through the cool hours of darkness. The fountain continued its gentle song, its water catching and reflecting the first stars as they appeared in the deepening sky above. The children's voices had grown quieter as the hour grew late, their games taking on the gentler character that comes when energy begins to ebb and the need for rest starts to make itself known. Soon they would be called in by parents who understood the value of allowing their offspring to play in this sacred space, but who also knew the importance of maintaining the rhythms of normal life that provided security and structure in a world that was still healing from the wounds of war. The veterans who had found solace in the garden's peace began to make their way toward the gates, some walking alone in quiet contemplation, while others moved in small groups, their conversations continuing the work of healing that had begun among the flowers and would continue in their homes and communities. They carried with them not just the memory of beauty they had experienced, but the living proof that renewal was possible even after the darkest night. The garden staff completed their evening rounds, checking that all was well with their botanical charges, adjusting supports for climbing vines, checking soil moisture around newly planted specimens, and making notes about which areas would need attention in the morning. Their work was never truly finished, for a garden was a living entity that required constant care and attention. But it was work that brought them deep satisfaction as they saw the daily evidence of growth and renewal that their efforts made possible. As full darkness settled over the royal gardens and the last visitors made their way home to warm hearths and comfortable beds, the memorial garden entered its nighttime phase of existence. This was when the healing energies that had been accumulated during the day's activities reached their peak potency, when the prayers and tears and laughter that had been offered among the flowers crystallized into a force that could work its quiet miracles on hearts that were ready to receive them. The nocturnal creatures that made their homes in the garden's hidden places emerged to begin their own work of tending and nurturing, as night-flying insects carried pollen from flower to flower, while bats cleared the air of pests that might otherwise damage the delicate plants. Earthworms moved through the soil, their patient labor improving the earth's fertility, while mice and shrews hunted for insects and seeds. Their small lives part of the vast web of existence that made the garden's beauty possible. King Terenas remained at his prayers for longer than usual this evening, drawn deeper into contemplation by the profound peace that settled over the garden like a gentle blanket. Here, surrounded by the evidence of life's determination to flourish even in the wake of destruction, he found the strength that would sustain him through the challenges of rebuilding that still lay ahead, the wisdom that would guide him in making decisions that would affect not just his own kingdom, but all the alliance lands that looked to Lordaeron for leadership. The eternal flame flickered in its crystal housing, its light creating dancing shadows among the memorial flowers, while casting a warm glow across the king's weathered features. In that light, the lines of worry and responsibility that marked his face seemed to soften. replaced by an expression of profound gratitude for the privilege of serving as guardian over a people who had proven their worth through sacrifice and courage beyond anything that could be demanded or expected. When he finally rose from his knees and began the slow walk back toward the palace, King Terenas carried with him the renewed sense of purpose that this daily ritual never failed to provide. The garden had given him what it offered to all who entered its bounds with open hearts, the assurance that life was stronger than death, that love was more powerful than hatred, that hope could take root even in soil that had been watered with tears. The palace windows glowed with warm light as he approached, their illumination a welcome sight that spoke of home and family, of the private joys that balance the public burdens of rule. Inside, his queen would be waiting with news of the day's small victories and minor challenges, while his children would be settling into the routines of evening that would carry them safely through the night and into the promise of another dawn. But even as he looked forward to these domestic comforts, part of his attention remained with the garden he was leaving behind, knowing that its work of healing would continue through the dark hours when human eyes could not observe its mysterious processes. The memorial flowers would continue their vigil through the night, their silent testimony to the value of remembrance, creating a sacred space where the living and the dead could commune in perfect peace. The eternal flame would burn on through darkness toward another dawn, its light a beacon of hope that could be seen from the highest windows of the palace and would guide any who might find themselves walking the garden paths in the pre-dawn hours when grief or joy or simple restlessness drove them to seek the solace that only this place could provide. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities for service, new chances to build upon the foundation of peace that had been purchased at such tremendous cost. There would be treaties to negotiate and trade agreements, to review petitions from citizens seeking justice and appeals from neighboring kingdoms requesting aid. The work of governance never ceased, for a kingdom was like a garden in its need for constant tending and care. But tonight, in the quiet hours when even kings were allowed to rest from their labors, the memorial garden would keep its vigil of remembrance and renewal. The flowers would continue their slow work of transforming grief into beauty, while the fountain sang its ancient songs of healing. The veterans who had found peace among the plantings would sleep more soundly, knowing that their sacrifices had created something of lasting value, while the children who had played on the garden paths would dream of futures filled with possibilities that their elders had fought to preserve. And in the heart of the garden, beneath the ancient oak that had survived war's devastation to put forth new leaves in testimony to life's indomitable spirit, the circle of memorial stones would stand ready for tomorrow's ceremonies of remembrance and dedication. New names might be added to the rolls of those to be honored. New flowers might be planted in tribute to fresh examples of courage and sacrifice. But the garden's essential purpose would remain unchanged, to serve as a living bridge between memory and hope, between the past that must be honored and the future that must be built. The king paused at the garden gate for one last look at the sanctuary that had become so precious to his kingdom's healing process. in the starlight that silvered the flower beds and made the fountain spray sparkle like liquid diamonds, he could see the outline of what the garden would become as it matured and evolved with the changing seasons. He could envision the day when children who had not yet been born would play among plants that were now mere seedlings, when veterans of future conflicts would find the same solace that today's survivors had discovered among these paths of peace. The thought filled him with satisfaction deeper than any victory won in battle or any treaty signed in the halls of diplomacy. This garden was his true legacy, not the kingdom he had ruled or the wars he had helped to win, but this living testament to the truth that beauty could grow from ashes, that hope could take root in the most unlikely soil, that love could triumph over death through the simple act of remembering with gratitude and tending with care. As he walked through the palace corridors toward the royal chambers where rest and family awaited, King Terenas carried with him the peace that the garden had given him, the deep contentment that came from knowing that he had played his part in creating something that would outlast his own brief moment on the stage of history. The memorial garden would continue its work of healing long after he had joined those whose names were inscribed on the memorial stones, its flowers blooming in eternal testimony to the truth that every ending could become a new beginning for those who had the courage to plant seeds of hope in soil that had been consecrated by sacrifice. The gentle laughter of children would echo through its paths for generations yet to come, while the tears of the grieving would water plants that would grow into monuments of living beauty more precious than any statue carved from lifeless stone. The garden would change with each passing season, its appearance never quite the same from year to year, but its essential message would remain constant, that death was not the final word, that destruction was not the ultimate reality, that in the end, love would prove stronger than hatred and hope, more enduring than despair. In the royal bedroom, the queen looked up from her needlework as her husband entered, seeing in his face the expression of profound peace that always marked his return from the evening vigil in the memorial garden. She knew without asking that he had found there what he always found: the strength to face another day of leadership with wisdom and compassion, the assurance that their kingdom was being built upon foundations more solid than mere political power or military might. Their children slept peacefully in the nursery down the hall, their dreams undisturbed by nightmares of war or worries about the future, because they lived in a world where gardens could bloom in memory of heroes and fountains could sing songs of hope. They would grow up in a kingdom where beauty was valued as much as strength, where gentleness was seen as a virtue rather than a weakness, where the work of building peace was considered as noble as any deed performed upon the battlefield. And in the memorial garden, the eternal flame burned on through the deepest hours of night, its light a promise that would be renewed with every sunrise and every new flower that opened its petals to greet another day of peace. The garden slept but did not rest, for its work was never finished. Its purpose never fully achieved as long as there remained hearts that needed healing and souls that sought the comfort that only beauty and remembrance could provide. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human joy and sorrow, but somehow made more meaningful by the presence below of beings who could create gardens in memory of the fallen and teach their children to tend flowers planted in tribute to love that transcended death itself. In the cosmic dance of light and darkness, the small flame that burned in Lordaeron's memorial garden was barely visible, but its significance was beyond measure for those who understood that the greatest victories were won not in the clash of armies, but in the quiet moments when grief was transformed into gratitude and loss was alchemized into love. The scene fades slowly into the eternal light of stars reflected in fountain water, carrying the listener gently toward dreams where gardens bloom forever in memory of heroes, where children's laughter echoes through halls of peace, and where the gentle work of tending beauty becomes the highest form of prayer, world without end. But the story of the memorial garden was far from complete, for its influence extended beyond the palace grounds into the very heart of the kingdom itself, touching lives and transforming communities in ways that no royal decree could have achieved. As word of the garden's healing power spread throughout Lordaeron and beyond, pilgrims began arriving from distant lands, drawn by reports of a place where grief could be transformed into beauty, and where hope could take root even in hearts that had been barren with despair. These visitors came from every walk of life and station of society, united only by their shared need for the kind of healing that the memorial garden offered to all who entered its bounds with open hearts. Farmers whose fields had been ravaged by war brought soil from their damaged lands to be blessed and renewed by contact with earth that had been consecrated by royal tears and watered with the prayers of saints. Merchants who had lost everything in the conflict found in the garden's peaceful paths a new understanding of wealth that could not be measured in gold or silver, but only in the richness of experience and the depth of gratitude for simple blessings. Nobles whose titles had been stripped away by the fortunes of war discovered among the flowers a nobility that came from service to ideals larger than personal advancement or social position. Artists and poets made the journey to Lordaeron seeking inspiration that could only be found in a place where beauty had grown from ashes and where the eternal themes of love and loss, memory and hope were given visible form in living color and growing fragrance. They sat for hours among the memorial plantings, sketching and writing and composing works that would carry the garden's message of renewal to audiences who might never see its wonders with their own eyes. Musicians found in the garden's natural symphony of fountain song and bird call, rustling leaves and humming insects, a composition more complex and beautiful than any that human skill could create. They learned to listen with ears attuned to subtleties of rhythm and harmony that existed below the threshold of ordinary awareness, discovering in the process new ways of creating music that could heal wounded souls and lift burdened hearts. Scholars came seeking to understand the principles that had made such transformation possible, studying not just the practical aspects of horticulture and landscape design, but the deeper mysteries of how physical beauty could serve as a catalyst for spiritual renewal. They interviewed the gardeners and observed the visitors, documenting with careful precision the methods and results of what they came to recognize as a form of therapeutic art that had applications far beyond the boundaries of any single garden. Religious leaders from many different traditions found common ground in the garden's universal language of beauty and remembrance, discovering that the deepest truths transcended the specific doctrines and practices that divided their institutional loyalties. They collaborated in developing new forms of ritual and ceremony that drew upon the garden's symbolism while respecting the diverse spiritual needs of its many visitors. Healers and physicians studied the garden's effects on both physical and emotional well-being, observing that patients who spent time among the memorial flowers showed measurable improvements in recovery rates and pain tolerance. They began incorporating garden visits into their treatment protocols, recognizing that healing was a process that involved far more than just the mechanical repair of damaged tissue. Children who had been orphaned by the war found in the garden a new kind of family, formed not by blood relationship, but by shared experience of loss and mutual commitment to creating something beautiful from the fragments of broken lives. They worked alongside the adult gardeners, learning not just the practical skills of cultivation, but the deeper wisdom that could transform any patch of earth into a sanctuary of hope. The garden's influence spread through networks of correspondence as visitors returned to their homes carrying seeds and cuttings that had been blessed by contact with the memorial soil. These botanical ambassadors took root in distant gardens, creating a living network of remembrance that connected communities across vast distances and cultural differences in a shared commitment to the cultivation of beauty and the preservation of memory. Schools began organizing pilgrimages to the memorial garden as part of their students' education in history and civic responsibility, recognizing that the lessons taught among the flowers were more powerful and lasting than any that could be learned from books or lectures. Young people who might have grown up with only abstract understanding of war's cost found in the garden's living testimony, a visceral appreciation for the value of peace and the importance of working to preserve it for future generations. The garden's caretakers developed specialized programs for different groups of visitors, understanding that the needs of grieving parents were different from those of wounded veterans, that children required different kinds of guidance than did elderly pilgrims, that those seeking spiritual renewal had different needs than those simply hoping for aesthetic pleasure. Master gardener Elizabeth Whitmore worked with a growing staff of specialists who had been trained not just in the technical aspects of plant care, but in the subtle art of helping visitors connect with the garden's healing energies. They learned to recognize the signs of deep grief and overwhelming pain, developing techniques for gently guiding such visitors toward the plantings and locations that would be most beneficial for their particular needs. A special section was created for families who had lost children in the conflict, planted with flowers that bloomed in the pure white of innocence and filled with play areas where surviving siblings could find joy without feeling guilty for their happiness. Here, parents could sit in contemplation while watching other people's children at play, gradually learning to see in those young faces not reminders of their loss, but promises of hope for the future. Veterans found their own gathering spaces where they could share their experiences with others who understood the particular challenges of returning to civilian life after witnessing the horrors of warfare. These areas were planted with sturdy perennials that returned year after year despite harsh conditions, living symbols of the resilience that allowed humans to survive and flourish even after the most traumatic experiences. A meditation grove was established in the garden's deepest recesses, surrounded by plants chosen for their symbolic associations with peace and contemplation. Here, visitors could sit in silent communion with forces larger than themselves, finding in the natural world's patient rhythms an antidote to the frantic pace and artificial pressures of urban life. The fountain at the garden's heart was enhanced with additional features that allowed visitors to participate more actively in the ritual of remembrance and renewal. Stone basins were placed at strategic locations where people could wash their hands and faces with water that had been blessed by its contact with the memorial stones, while special receptacles collected flowers and written prayers that would be incorporated into compost that would nourish future plantings. Seasonal celebrations were established to mark the major transitions of the natural year, creating opportunities for the community to gather in shared recognition of the cycles of death and rebirth that governed all existence. Spring plantings became occasions for hope and renewal. Summer festivals celebrated the fullness of life at its peak. Autumn harvests provided opportunities for gratitude and reflection, while winter ceremonies acknowledged the necessity of rest and the promise of eventual return. The garden's library grew to include not just technical manuals on horticulture and landscape design, but collections of poetry and prose inspired by its beauty, historical accounts of the conflicts that had made its creation necessary, and philosophical reflections on the deeper meanings of memory and hope. Scholars and ordinary visitors alike could find resources to deepen their understanding of the garden's significance and their own relationship to its healing work. A workshop program was developed to teach visitors practical skills they could use to create their own memorial gardens and healing spaces. These classes covered everything from basic plant selection and soil preparation to the more esoteric arts of designing landscapes that would promote contemplation and spiritual renewal. Graduates of these programs became ambassadors for the garden's philosophy, spreading its influence through their own communities and projects. The economic impact of the memorial garden extended far beyond the direct revenues from pilgrimage and tourism, as the skilled craftspeople and specialized suppliers who served its needs created new industries and employment opportunities throughout the kingdom. Nurseries specializing in memorial plants, workshops producing garden ornaments and furnishings, and services catering to pilgrims all flourished in response to the garden's growing reputation and influence. But perhaps most importantly, the garden served as a model for a new approach to governance and social organization that prioritized healing and renewal over punishment and control. King Terenas found that the principles he had learned in creating and maintaining the memorial garden could be applied to many other aspects of ruling, from criminal justice reform to economic policy to international diplomacy. The idea that beauty and compassion were not luxuries to be indulged only in times of prosperity, but essential tools for building strong and resilient communities, began to influence policy decisions throughout the Alliance kingdoms. Military budgets were restructured to include funding for veterans' rehabilitation programs modeled on the garden's therapeutic approaches, while urban planning initiatives incorporated green spaces designed according to principles developed in Lordaeron's memorial gardens. Educational reforms emphasized the cultivation of emotional intelligence and aesthetic sensitivity alongside traditional academic subjects, recognizing that citizens who had learned to appreciate beauty and understand the healing power of nature would be better equipped to build and maintain peaceful societies. Art and music programs were expanded not as mere entertainment or cultural decoration, but as essential elements in the development of healthy, well-rounded individuals. Agricultural policies were modified to encourage farming practices that prioritized soil health and biodiversity over short-term profit maximization, understanding that land that was cared for with love and respect would provide sustainable abundance for generations, while also serving as a source of spiritual renewal for those who worked it. Gardens and green spaces became integral parts of urban planning, recognized as essential infrastructure for community health and social cohesion. International relations were conducted with greater attention to the emotional and spiritual dimensions of diplomacy, as ambassadors trained in the Memorial Gardens principles learned to approach negotiations with empathy and wisdom rather than mere calculation of advantage. Treaties began to include provisions for cultural exchange and mutual assistance in times of natural disaster, reflecting an understanding that true security came from building relationships based on trust and shared values rather than mere balance of power. The Memorial Gardens' influence on religious and philosophical thought was equally profound, as theologians and thinkers from many traditions found in its example new ways of understanding the relationship between the sacred and the secular, the spiritual and the material. The garden demonstrated that places could be holy without being formally consecrated, that ritual could be meaningful without being institutionally sanctioned, that worship could be authentic without conforming to established liturgical forms. This recognition led to a flowering of new spiritual movements and practices that drew inspiration from the natural world and emphasized direct experience of the divine through contemplation of beauty and engagement with the healing work of cultivation. Mystery schools developed around the garden's principles, teaching students to read the subtle signs of spiritual health in both human communities and natural ecosystems. The garden also served as a laboratory for new approaches to mental and emotional healing, as practitioners experimented with therapeutic modalities that combine traditional counseling techniques with the powerful medicine of natural beauty and meaningful work. Patients who had shown little response to conventional treatments often experienced remarkable breakthroughs when their therapy included regular time spent in cultivation and contemplation among the memorial flowers. Research conducted in partnership with the garden's staff led to new understanding of the connections between physical environment and psychological well-being, providing scientific validation for what mystics and poets had always known, that beauty was not merely decorative but essential for human flourishing. These findings influenced architecture and urban planning throughout the known world, as builders, and designers learned to create spaces that supported human thriving on every level. The children who had grown up playing in the memorial garden became adults with a fundamentally different relationship to concepts of power and success than their elders had possessed. They measured achievement not by wealth accumulated or enemies defeated, but by beauty created and suffering alleviated, by communities strengthened and relationships deepened, by the health of the land and the happiness of future generations. These young adults became leaders in their own right, carrying the garden's influence into every field of human endeavor. They became merchants who treated commerce as an opportunity for mutual enrichment rather than competitive advantage, soldiers who understood that the highest victory was the one that eliminated the need for further conflict, scholars who pursued knowledge in service of wisdom rather than mere intellectual accomplishment. They became artists whose work carried the power to heal wounded hearts and lift burdened spirits, healers whose understanding of wellness included not just physical health, but emotional and spiritual vitality, teachers who recognized that true education was about cultivating human potential rather than merely transmitting information from one generation to the next. Most importantly, they became parents who taught their own children to see the world as a garden to be tended rather than a resource to be exploited, to understand their place in the great web of existence that connected all living things in relationships of mutual dependence and shared destiny. These children of the memorial garden carried within themselves the seeds of a new kind of civilization, one that could maintain its strength and prosperity while also preserving the beauty and harmony that made life worth living. The seasons turned and the years passed, marking the passage of time with the patient rhythms of growth and renewal that governed all natural processes. The memorial garden aged and matured, its plantings growing ever more beautiful as they established deeper roots and formed more complex relationships with each other and with the creatures that made their homes among the flowers. New sections were added as space permitted and need arose, each one designed according to the principles that had guided the original plantings, but adapted to serve the specific requirements of different groups of visitors or to commemorate particular events or individuals whose sacrifices deserved special recognition. Veterans of new conflicts found their own memorial spaces, while victims of natural disasters and epidemic diseases were remembered with plantings chosen for their symbolic appropriateness and healing properties. The garden's influence spread beyond the boundaries of human society to affect the natural world as well, as the concentration of healing energy and loving attention created conditions that supported an unusual diversity of plant and animal life. Rare species that had been driven from other areas by warfare and development found refuge among the memorial flowers, while common species flourished in ways that demonstrated the power of conscious cultivation to enhance rather than diminish natural abundance. Migrating birds learned to include the garden in their travel routes, finding in its sanctuary a reliable source of food and shelter that made long journeys possible. Beneficial insects thrived in the pesticide-free environment, creating a natural balance that eliminated the need for artificial pest control while supporting pollination services that benefited agriculture throughout the surrounding region. The soil itself became famous among agricultural specialists for its extraordinary fertility and health, studied as an example of what could be achieved when human activity worked in harmony with natural processes rather than attempting to dominate or control them. Samples of the garden's earth were requested by researchers and farmers from distant lands who hoped to understand the principles that had created such abundant life from what had once been damaged and depleted ground. Even the weather seemed to respond to the garden's presence, as visitors noted that rain fell more gently within its boundaries, winds blew more softly among its paths, and sunlight seemed somehow warmer and more nurturing than in other places. Whether these effects were real or merely perceived mattered less than the fact that people consistently reported feeling more at peace and more hopeful after spending time in the memorial garden's embrace. King Terenas aged gracefully in the decades following the garden's establishment, his daily walks among the memorial flowers providing not just physical exercise, but spiritual nourishment that sustained him through the inevitable challenges and sorrows that accompanied a long life of service. He watched with satisfaction as his kingdom grew more prosperous and more peaceful with each passing year, understanding that the garden's influence had created a foundation of wisdom and compassion that would support future generations long after his own time had passed. His children and grandchildren learned at his side the subtle arts of tending both gardens and kingdoms, understanding that the principles were fundamentally the same: patient cultivation, careful attention to the needs of growing things, willingness to work with natural forces rather than against them, and above all, the understanding that true wealth lay not in what could be accumulated, but in what could be nurtured into flourishing. The queen found in the garden's peaceful precincts a sanctuary where she could practice her own forms of service, hosting gatherings for women who had been widowed by war, and helping them discover new sources of meaning and purpose in lives that had been forever changed by loss. Her gentle guidance and practical wisdom helped countless souls navigate the difficult transition from being wives and mothers in traditional families to becoming independent contributors to their community's well-being. The royal grandchildren grew up taking for granted the beauty and tranquility that their elders had fought so hard to achieve, but they were taught to understand and appreciate the sacrifices that had made their peaceful childhoods possible. They learned the names and stories of the heroes commemorated in the memorial flowers, understanding that their own privileged lives carried with them the responsibility to ensure that such sacrifices would not be necessary again. These young royals became ambassadors for the garden's philosophy in their interactions with visiting dignitaries and foreign princes, sharing not through formal diplomatic presentations, but through simple invitations to walk among the flowers and experience firsthand the healing power that beauty and remembrance could provide. Many international conflicts were resolved or prevented entirely through conversations that took place in the garden's peaceful atmosphere. As opponents discovered their common humanity in the face of universal experiences of love and loss, the memorial garden had become more than just a monument to the fallen or even a therapeutic resource for the grieving. It had evolved into a living symbol of what human society could achieve when it organized itself around principles of compassion, beauty, and respect for life in all its forms. Visitors left carrying with them not just pleasant memories, but practical examples of how communities could be structured to support human flourishing, while also preserving and enhancing the natural world. The ripple effects of these examples continued to spread through ever-widening circles of influence, as communities throughout the known world established their own memorial gardens and healing spaces modeled on Lordaeron's example. Each one was unique, adapted to local conditions and cultural traditions, but all shared the common commitment to transforming grief into beauty and using the power of natural harmony to promote healing and renewal. Networks of correspondence developed among the caretakers of these various gardens, sharing techniques and insights that improved their effectiveness while also creating bonds of friendship and mutual support that transcended political boundaries and cultural differences. Annual gatherings were organized where representatives could meet to exchange seeds and cuttings, share stories of success and challenge, and deepen their understanding of the principles that made their work possible. These connections proved invaluable during times of crisis, as communities that had learned to create beauty from ashes were uniquely equipped to help others facing similar challenges. When natural disasters struck or conflicts arose, teams of experienced garden builders could be quickly mobilized to help establish emergency healing spaces that would support both immediate relief efforts and long-term recovery processes. The memorial garden had thus become the seed of a new kind of international order, one based not on military alliances or economic treaties, but on shared commitment to the cultivation of beauty and the preservation of life. This network of gardens and gardeners provided a foundation for peace that was deeper and more enduring than any that had previously existed, because it was rooted in the universal human experiences that transcended all superficial differences of nationality, religion, or social class. And at the heart of it all, in the royal gardens of Lordaeron where the movement had begun, King Terenas continued his daily walks among the memorial flowers, tending with his own hands the plantings that had grown from seeds watered with the tears of the grieving and nurtured with the hopes of those who dared to believe that a better world was possible. His steps had worn smooth paths through the garden that thousands of other pilgrims would follow in years to come, each one adding their own small contribution to the great work of healing and renewal that would continue as long as there remained hearts willing to choose love over hatred, beauty over ugliness, hope over despair. The eternal flame burned on in its crystal housing, its light a constant reminder that no sacrifice was forgotten, no love was lost, no beauty was ever truly destroyed as long as there remained those willing to tend the gardens where memory and hope could meet in perfect harmony. And in the gentle sound of children's laughter echoing through the memorial paths, in the soft song of water flowing from the fountain of renewal, in the sweet fragrance of flowers blooming in every season, and the whispered prayers of pilgrims from every land, the garden spoke its eternal message of comfort and encouragement to all who had eyes to see and hearts to understand. The scene fades slowly into the gentle twilight of eternal peace, carrying the listener gently toward dreams where gardens bloom forever in every season, where fountains sing lullabies of hope, and where the patient work of tending beauty becomes the highest form of worship, world without end, in the heart of the divine love that embraces all creation. But even as the memorial garden reached its full maturity and its influence spread throughout the civilized world, deeper mysteries continued to unfold within its sacred boundaries. The intersection of human love and natural beauty had created something unprecedented in the history of the world. A place where the veil between the physical and spiritual realms had grown so thin that miracles became commonplace and the impossible transformed into the inevitable. Visitors began reporting experiences that challenged every conventional understanding of the relationship between mind and matter, soul and substance. Flowers were observed blooming out of season in response to the presence of particularly grieving mourners, their unexpected beauty serving as visible comfort to hearts that had thought themselves beyond consolation. Trees that had been damaged by storms would heal overnight when tended by veterans whose own wounds ran deeper than any surgeon could reach. The fountain at the garden's heart began displaying properties that defied explanation by any natural law, as its waters were found to possess remarkable healing qualities that seemed to respond to the specific needs of each individual who drank from them. Soldiers suffering from injuries that had resisted all medical treatment found their pain diminishing after bathing in the fountain's blessed flow, while those struggling with the invisible wounds of traumatic memory discovered that their nightmares ceased after drinking from its crystal streams. Dr. Margaret Alston, a physician and researcher who had come from the distant kingdom of Gilneas to study the garden's therapeutic effects, documented hundreds of cases that by any rational standard should have been classified as miraculous. Her careful observations and meticulous record-keeping provided scientific validation for phenomena that challenged the materialist assumptions underlying contemporary medical practice. Patients with terminal illnesses experienced unexpected remissions after spending extended periods among the memorial flowers, while individuals suffering from supposedly incurable conditions found their symptoms gradually diminishing through participation in the garden's daily rhythms of planting, tending, and harvesting. The correlation between exposure to the garden's environment and improvement in both physical and mental health was so consistent that skeptics were forced to acknowledge that something extraordinary was indeed occurring within its boundaries. But Dr. Alston's research revealed that the garden's healing power was not merely a matter of pleasant surroundings or reduced stress, though these factors certainly played a role. Chemical analysis of the soil revealed mineral compositions that had no geological explanation, while studies of the air quality showed the presence of trace elements that promoted cellular regeneration and enhanced immune system function. The very atmosphere within the garden had been transformed by years of concentrated love and intentional care into something that actively supported life and health. Even more remarkably, the garden seemed to respond to the emotional and spiritual states of its visitors in ways that suggested a form of consciousness that transcended individual plant or animal awareness. Sections of the garden would spontaneously reorganize themselves to create more appropriate environments for particular types of healing work, while paths would appear where they were needed most and disappear when they were no longer required. The eternal flame that burned at the garden's heart was found to pulse with rhythms that corresponded to the collective emotional state of all those present within the garden's boundaries at any given moment. During times of great sorrow or intense prayer, the flame would burn more brightly, while periods of peace and contentment were marked by a gentle, steady glow that seemed to embrace all who gathered in its presence. Birds and other wildlife exhibited behaviors within the garden that were never observed in other environments, as if they too were responding to the unusual energies that permeated the space. Songbirds would gather in unprecedented numbers during memorial services, their music creating natural harmonies that seemed to express the very emotions that human voices could not adequately convey. Butterflies would appear at moments of particular poignancy, their delicate beauty serving as visible symbols of transformation and renewal. The garden's caretakers developed increasingly sophisticated techniques for working with these mysterious forces, learning through careful observation and intuitive understanding how to enhance and direct the healing energies that flowed through every aspect of their botanical sanctuary. Master gardener Elizabeth Whitmore trained a new generation of specialists who combined traditional horticultural knowledge with subtle abilities that bordered on what previous ages would have called magic. These garden mystics, as they came to be known, could sense the specific needs of individual plants and animals with unprecedented accuracy, adjusting soil conditions and care routines to optimize not just physical health, but also the spiritual contribution that each living thing made to the garden's overall harmony. They learned to read the subtle signs that indicated when particular areas were ready for new plantings or when existing installations needed to be modified to better serve their intended purposes. Their work attracted the attention of scholars and practitioners from fields as diverse as theology, psychology, physics, and philosophy, all seeking to understand the principles that govern the garden's remarkable properties. A research institute was established adjacent to the memorial grounds, dedicated to the systematic study of consciousness-matter interactions and their applications to healing, agriculture, and community development. The Institute's findings revolutionized understanding of the relationship between intention and physical reality, providing empirical evidence for what mystics had always claimed, that focused love and concentrated attention could literally reshape the material world according to higher purposes. These discoveries had profound implications, not just for medicine and agriculture, but for every field of human endeavor that involved the interaction between conscious will and physical matter. Architectural principles developed through study of the garden's energy dynamics led to new forms of building design that could enhance rather than inhibit the natural healing processes that occurred within human communities. Urban planners began incorporating these insights into city designs that promoted both individual wellness and social harmony, creating environments that supported human flourishing on every level. Agricultural techniques inspired by the garden's methods produced crops of unprecedented nutritional value and flavor, while also regenerating depleted soils and supporting biodiversity in ways that conventional farming had never achieved. Farmers who learned to work with the consciousness inherent in land and plants found that their yields increased dramatically, while their dependence on external inputs diminished to almost nothing. Educational programs based on the garden's principles taught students to recognize and work with the subtle energies that connected all living things, preparing a generation of leaders who understood that true power came not from domination, but from conscious cooperation with natural forces. These graduates became innovators in every field, creating technologies and social systems that enhanced life rather than merely exploiting it. The Memorial Garden had thus become more than a place of healing and remembrance. It had evolved into a laboratory for the development of an entirely new form of civilization, based on the conscious integration of spiritual wisdom with practical knowledge. The principles discovered and refined within its boundaries offered humanity a path toward a future that transcended the limitations and conflicts that had characterized previous eras. International delegations began arriving regularly to study the garden's methods and adapt them to their own cultural contexts and geographical conditions. Each visiting group left with seeds and cuttings that carried not just genetic material, but also subtle information patterns that could help establish similar healing environments in distant lands. A network of sister gardens gradually developed across the known world, each one unique, but all sharing the fundamental commitment to transforming suffering into beauty and using the power of conscious love to heal the wounds that warfare and conflict had inflicted upon both human society and the natural world. These gardens became centers of learning and innovation that influenced every aspect of life in their surrounding communities. The children who grew up within the influence of these gardens developed capabilities that previous generations would have considered impossible. They could sense the emotional states of plants and animals with remarkable accuracy, communicate across vast distances through methods that transcended conventional understanding, and work with natural forces in ways that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics as they were traditionally understood. These gifts were not supernatural aberrations, but natural potentials that had been suppressed by centuries of disconnection from the living world and its subtle energies. The gardens provided environments where such abilities could develop safely and be integrated with practical knowledge in ways that serve the greater good, rather than merely satisfying individual curiosity or ambition. As these children reached maturity, they became leaders in the development of new forms of technology that worked in harmony with natural processes rather than attempting to dominate or control them. Their innovations included methods of transportation that used consciousness-directed energy fields, construction techniques that could shape matter through focused intention, and communication systems that operated through direct mind-to-mind contact. But perhaps most importantly, they developed new forms of governance based on the principle of conscious consensus, where decisions were made not through political maneuvering or majority rule, but through the collective wisdom that emerged when groups of individuals aligned their consciousness with higher purposes. These experimental communities became models for social organization that eliminated the conflicts and inefficiencies that had plagued previous forms of human society. The memorial garden in Lordaeron remained the acknowledged center of this growing network of consciousness-based communities. Its founder, King Terenas, recognized throughout the civilized world as the visionary leader whose simple act of creating beauty from grief had catalyzed a transformation in human potential that continued to unfold with each passing generation. In his later years, the king spent increasing amounts of time in contemplative meditation among the memorial flowers, his consciousness gradually expanding to encompass not just his own kingdom, but the entire web of life that connected all beings throughout the universe. Visitors often found him sitting in perfect stillness beneath the ancient oak, his presence radiating a peace so profound that merely being in his vicinity could heal the deepest wounds of body and soul. His daily walks through the garden became pilgrimage destinations in themselves as people traveled from distant lands for the privilege of accompanying the aged monarch on his gentle rounds among the paths where so much love had been invested and so much wisdom accumulated. These walks were conducted in silence, but the transformative power of shared contemplation in sacred space often accomplished more healing than hours of verbal counseling or medical treatment. The queen had passed into eternal rest several years earlier, but her presence remained palpable throughout the garden spaces that she had helped design and nurture. Her memorial was not a monument of stone or metal, but a grove of fruit trees whose harvest provided nourishment for all who visited the garden, ensuring that her love would continue to feed both body and soul for countless generations to come. The royal children, now adults with children and grandchildren of their own, continued the work of expanding and refining the garden's influence throughout the known world. Each had developed particular areas of expertise, one focusing on the agricultural applications of consciousness-based growing techniques, another specializing in the therapeutic uses of garden environments for treating various forms of physical and mental illness. One daughter had become renowned for her ability to design memorial gardens that could help entire communities heal from the trauma of natural disasters or human conflicts, while a son had developed techniques for using garden spaces to facilitate diplomatic negotiations and conflict resolution between formerly hostile parties. Their combined efforts had helped establish hundreds of healing gardens throughout the Alliance territories and beyond. The grandchildren represented the full flowering of the garden's educational influence, as they possessed abilities and understanding that surpassed even their remarkable parents. They could perceive the subtle patterns of energy that connected all living things, work directly with the consciousness of plants and animals to achieve unprecedented levels of cooperation and harmony, and channel healing forces that operated beyond the reach of conventional medicine. But they wore their extraordinary gifts lightly, understanding that true power lay not in personal accomplishment, but in service to the greater good of all life. They became teachers and healers, innovators and peacemakers, their entire lives dedicated to the expansion of the Memorial Garden's central insight, that love expressed through conscious action could transform any apparent tragedy into unexpected blessing. The garden itself continued to evolve and expand, its boundaries gradually extending as new sections were added to accommodate the increasing numbers of pilgrims and the growing complexity of healing work being conducted within its sacred precincts. Each new addition was planned and planted according to principles that had been refined through decades of careful observation and spiritual insight, ensuring that every element contributed to the overall harmony and effectiveness of the whole. Special therapeutic gardens were developed for specific categories of healing work. Areas designed to help war veterans integrate their traumatic experiences. Spaces dedicated to helping bereaved parents find new meaning and purpose. Groves specifically arranged to support individuals recovering from serious illnesses or injuries. Each section was planted with species selected not just for their beauty, but for their subtle energetic properties and their symbolic associations with particular aspects of the healing process. The children's garden had evolved into an elaborate wonderland where young visitors could learn about the natural world through direct experience and play, developing the sensitivity and understanding that would allow them to work constructively with natural forces throughout their lives. Adventure trails wound through miniature landscapes that demonstrated different ecological principles, while hands-on activities taught practical skills of gardening, animal care, and environmental stewardship. A reflection garden provided space for quiet contemplation and meditation, its paths arranged in patterns that encouraged introspective walking, and its plantings chosen to promote states of consciousness conducive to spiritual insight and emotional healing. Benches placed at carefully calculated intervals allowed visitors to rest and absorb the peaceful energies that accumulated in areas where so much prayer and contemplation had been focused over the years. The healing circle at the garden's heart had been expanded to accommodate larger groups, its stone arrangements enhanced with crystals and other mineral formations that had been discovered to amplify and focus the subtle energies that flowed through the sacred space. The eternal flame burned at the center of this circle, its light now visible from every corner of the expanded garden complex. Seasonal festivals celebrating the major transitions of the natural year had become major cultural events that attracted visitors from throughout the known world. These celebrations combined elements from many different spiritual traditions, creating new forms of ritual and ceremony that honored universal human experiences of birth, growth, death, and renewal without favoring any particular religious or cultural perspective. The Spring Planting Festival had become especially popular as families came to participate in the annual renewal of the garden's living memorial by planting new flowers and trees in honor of loved ones who had passed away during the previous year. Children who had never known war learned about courage and sacrifice through stories told while their hands worked in soil that had been consecrated by the tears of heroes. Summer solstice celebrations focused on the fullness of life at its peak, with music and dancing that continued from sunset to sunrise, while the garden's nocturnal flowers opened to release their fragrances into air filled with joy and gratitude. These all-night festivals became opportunities for communities to strengthen their bonds, while also connecting with natural rhythms that urban life often obscured. Autumn harvest ceremonies provided opportunities for reflection and thanksgiving as the year's growth reached completion and the garden began its preparation for winter rest. Visitors gathered fruits and vegetables that had been grown according to consciousness-based techniques, sharing meals that nourished both body and soul while creating memories that would sustain them through the darker months ahead. Winter solstice observances acknowledged the necessity of rest and the promise of eventual return, as shortened days and dormant plants reminded all participants of the cyclical nature of existence and the importance of trust in processes that operated beyond immediate understanding. The eternal flame burned brightest during these celebrations, its light a promise that no darkness, however deep, could extinguish the inner fire that sustained all life. As the years passed and the garden's influence continued to spread throughout the civilized world, it became clear that something unprecedented in human history was occurring. The memorial garden had catalyzed a transformation in human consciousness that was gradually spreading to encompass entire populations, creating the foundation for a new kind of civilization based on cooperation rather than competition, wisdom rather than mere cleverness, love rather than fear. This transformation was not occurring through conquest or coercion, but through the simple power of example. As individuals who had experienced the garden's healing influence returned to their communities, carrying with them new understandings of what human life could become when aligned with natural principles and spiritual wisdom. The changes spread from person to person like ripples on a pond, each contact creating new possibilities for further expansion. Wars became increasingly rare as leaders trained in the garden's principles found diplomatic solutions to conflicts that previous generations would have resolved through violence. Economic systems evolved toward models that prioritize sustainability and equity over short-term profit, while technological development focused on innovations that enhanced life rather than merely increasing productivity or military capability. Art and literature flourished as creators inspired by the garden's example produced works that carried healing energy and transformative power, their beauty serving not just aesthetic purposes, but also therapeutic and spiritual functions. Music evolved to include forms that could directly influence consciousness and promote healing, while visual arts developed techniques for encoding subtle information that could be absorbed through contemplation. Scientific research increasingly focused on understanding the subtle forces that connected mind and matter, consciousness and cosmos, leading to discoveries that revolutionized every field of human knowledge. Medicine evolved beyond the treatment of symptoms to address the spiritual causes of illness, while physics expanded to encompass the role of consciousness in shaping physical reality. Education transformed from a process of filling empty minds with predetermined content to one of awakening and developing the inherent wisdom and creativity that existed within every individual. Schools became gardens where young souls could grow according to their own natural patterns, while also learning to contribute constructively to the larger community of life. Religious institutions found themselves challenged to move beyond dogma and ritual toward direct spiritual experience as more people gained access to states of consciousness that had previously been available only to advanced mystics. The boundaries between different faith traditions began to dissolve as practitioners discovered that all authentic spiritual paths led ultimately toward the same universal source of love and wisdom. The memorial garden had thus achieved something far greater than its original purpose of providing comfort to the grieving and honor to the fallen. It had become the seed of a new form of human civilization based on the conscious integration of spiritual wisdom with practical knowledge, offering hope for a future where the conflicts and limitations that had characterized previous eras could be transcended through the power of love expressed in conscious action. King Terenas, now ancient in years but young in spirit, continued his daily walks through the garden paths where so much transformation had begun, with the simple decision to plant flowers in memory of heroes. Each step he took retraced routes worn smooth by the feet of countless pilgrims, while each breath he drew carried the accumulated fragrance of decades of devoted cultivation and conscious care. His presence had become a blessing that touched everyone who encountered it. His consciousness so expanded and refined through years of meditation among the memorial flowers that merely being in his vicinity could trigger profound healing and spiritual awakening. Visitors often reported life-changing insights and miraculous recoveries simply from the brief moments when they walked beside the aged king on his gentle rounds through the garden that had become his life's greatest masterpiece. The eternal flame continued to burn at the garden's heart, its light now visible not just within the physical boundaries of the memorial space, but extending through subtle dimensions to touch the consciousness of anyone who opened their heart to receive its blessing. The flame had become a beacon of hope that could be perceived across vast distances by those who had learned to see with spiritual rather than merely physical vision. And in the gentle sound of water flowing from the fountain of renewal, in the sweet fragrance of flowers blooming in every season, in the soft rustle of leaves moved by breezes that carried prayers and blessings to every corner of the garden and beyond, the memorial space continued to speak its eternal message of comfort and encouragement to all who had hearts to understand and souls willing to be transformed by love. The scene fades slowly into the eternal peace of perfect love, carrying the listener gently toward dreams where every tear becomes a flower, every sorrow becomes a song, every ending becomes a new beginning, and where the garden of the heart blooms forever in the light of consciousness that knows no darkness and love that knows no end. Yet, even as the memorial garden reached heights of influence and recognition that its founders had never imagined possible, its deepest mysteries remained yet to be fully revealed. For in truth, the garden was not merely a place where healing occurred, but a living temple where the very foundations of reality could be glimpsed by those who had learned to see with eyes of spirit rather than flesh. In the final years of King Terenas's long and fruitful life, the garden began manifesting phenomena that challenged every conventional understanding of the relationship between consciousness and creation. Flowers were observed changing color in response to the emotional states of visitors, their petals shifting through subtle gradations of hue that perfectly reflected the inner weather of human hearts. Trees began growing in patterns that corresponded to sacred geometric principles, their branches forming living mandalas of extraordinary beauty and mathematical precision. The fountain at the garden's heart developed the ability to reflect not just the physical forms of those who gazed into its waters, but the deeper patterns of their souls, revealing aspects of their spiritual development and karmic history that no ordinary mirror could display. Pilgrims who meditated beside its flowing waters often experienced profound visions that provided guidance for their life paths and healing for traumas that extended back through multiple generations. The eternal flame began pulsing in rhythms that corresponded to cosmic cycles invisible to normal perception, its fluctuations marking the movements of celestial bodies and the ebb and flow of spiritual energies that affected the development of consciousness throughout the galaxy. Mystics trained in the interpretation of these subtle signs could read in the flame's variations a kind of cosmic weather report that helped them understand the optimal timing for various forms of spiritual work. Birds and other creatures developed new forms of behavior within the garden's boundaries that suggested levels of intelligence and awareness far beyond what science had previously attributed to non-human life. They began participating in the garden's ceremonies and rituals with deliberate intention, their songs and movements contributing to the collective energy in ways that enhanced the healing effects for all participants. The soil itself began exhibiting properties that defied explanation by any known geological process, as crystals formed spontaneously in patterns that amplified and focused the subtle energies flowing through the garden's network of paths and planting beds. These natural formations served as organic technological components in a vast living system that operated according to principles that transcended purely mechanical understanding. Plant species began evolving at accelerated rates within the garden's boundaries, developing new characteristics that enhance their symbolic value and therapeutic properties, while also increasing their ability to serve as conscious participants in the garden's healing work. Flowers developed new fragrances that could induce specific states of consciousness, while trees grew in shapes that created natural amphitheaters and meditation spaces perfectly suited for various forms of spiritual practice. The garden's human caretakers found their own abilities expanding in response to their prolonged exposure to these extraordinary energies. They developed forms of plant communication that allowed direct collaboration with the botanical consciousness in planning new sections and adjusting existing arrangements. Some gained the ability to perceive the subtle energy patterns that flowed through all living things, enabling them to optimize the garden's effectiveness in ways that had never before been possible. Master Gardener Elizabeth Whitmore, now ancient but still vital, had evolved into something approaching a plant mystic whose understanding of botanical consciousness far exceeded anything taught in conventional horticultural education. She could sense the specific needs and desires of individual plants with such accuracy that she became legendary for her ability to help struggling specimens flourish and to integrate new plantings seamlessly into existing garden communities. Under her guidance, a new generation of garden mystics developed techniques for working with plant consciousness that revolutionized agriculture throughout the known world. Farmers who learned her methods found their crops responding with unprecedented enthusiasm, producing yields that exceeded all previous records while also improving in nutritional value and medicinal properties. These agricultural innovations had profound social implications, as the increased food security they provided eliminated one of the primary causes of conflict between different communities and nations. The garden's influence thus extended far beyond its physical boundaries to affect the geopolitical stability of entire regions, promoting peace through the simple expedient of ensuring that everyone had enough to eat. The garden's educational programs evolved to include training in these advanced consciousness plant interaction techniques, attracting students from throughout the civilized world who came to learn skills that would allow them to serve as bridges between human and botanical consciousness in their own communities. These graduates became the founders of agricultural mystery schools that preserved and transmitted the garden's most profound insights. Therapeutic applications of consciousness plant collaboration led to breakthrough treatments for conditions that had previously been considered hopeless. Mental illnesses that had resisted all conventional therapy often responded dramatically to programs that included working with plants specifically chosen for their ability to help rebalance human consciousness. Physical ailments rooted in spiritual imbalances found healing through exposure to plant communities that had been cultivated to address specific energetic distortions. The garden became a living laboratory for research into the nature of consciousness itself, as scientists and mystics collaborated in studies that revealed the underlying unity between mind and matter that had always been suspected by philosophers, but never before demonstrated through direct observation. Their findings revolutionized every field of knowledge, from physics and chemistry to psychology and medicine. International delegations of scholars and researchers made regular pilgrimages to study the garden's phenomena and learn techniques that could be adapted to their own cultural contexts and geographical conditions. A permanent research institute was established to coordinate these investigations and ensure that the knowledge gained would be preserved and transmitted to future generations. The Institute's library became one of the great repositories of wisdom in the known world, containing not just books and scrolls, but living botanical specimens that served as libraries of genetic and energetic information. Certain plants had been developed to store complex data patterns within their cellular structure, creating biological archives that could preserve vast amounts of information for potentially unlimited periods of time. The garden's influence on the arts reached unprecedented heights as musicians, painters, poets, and other creative artists found inspiration in its extraordinary beauty and spiritual depth. New art forms developed that could directly transmit healing energies and consciousness-expanding experiences, their appreciation requiring not just aesthetic sensitivity, but also spiritual development on the part of both creator and audience. Musical compositions created within the garden's influence incorporated frequencies and harmonies that could induce specific states of consciousness and promote various forms of healing. Visual artworks carried encoded information patterns that could be absorbed through contemplation, their beauty serving as a delivery system for transformative spiritual insights. Literary works inspired by the garden's example developed new forms of language that could convey subtle spiritual truths with unprecedented clarity and power. Poetry evolved beyond mere verbal artistry to become a form of consciousness technology that could directly transmit states of awareness from writer to reader across vast distances of space and time. The garden's children, those who had grown up within its influence and absorbed its teachings from their earliest years, began manifesting abilities that represented a new stage in human evolution. They could communicate telepathically across great distances, perceive the subtle energy patterns that connected all living things, and work directly with consciousness to shape physical reality in ways that serve the highest good of all life. These evolved humans became leaders in every field of endeavor, their enhanced capabilities allowing them to solve problems and create innovations that had been impossible for previous generations. They developed new forms of technology that worked in harmony with natural processes, created social systems that eliminated the root causes of conflict and suffering, and established educational methods that could awaken latent potentials in any individual willing to undergo the necessary training. But perhaps most importantly, they served as living examples of what human beings could become when their development occurred in environments that supported the full flowering of both individual potential and collective wisdom. Their very existence proved that the limitations and conflicts that had plagued previous eras were not inevitable features of human nature, but merely the result of conditions that could be changed through conscious effort and proper understanding. The memorial garden had thus become far more than a monument to fallen heroes, or even a center for healing and renewal. It had evolved into a birth center for a new form of human consciousness, a place where the future of the species was being literally grown from seeds planted in soil, watered with tears of gratitude, and tended with hands guided by love. King Terenas, in the final year of his earthly life, spent most of his time in deep communion with the garden's consciousness, his own awareness so expanded through decades of spiritual practice that he had become a living bridge between human and cosmic consciousness. Visitors found that simply being in his presence could trigger profound spiritual awakenings and miraculous healings, as if his very existence had become a transmission medium for the highest possible manifestations of divine love. His daily walks through the garden paths had become moving meditations that drew participants from throughout the known world. Pilgrims who came not to hear teachings spoken in words, but to receive direct transmissions of consciousness that could transform their entire understanding of existence. These silent processions through the memorial gardens became legendary as the most powerful spiritual practices available to embodied beings. When the king's time finally came to leave his physical form and join the eternal realm that he had served so faithfully throughout his long life, his passing was marked not by sorrow, but by celebration, as the entire garden burst into unprecedented bloom, regardless of season or weather. Flowers that had never been seen before appeared spontaneously throughout the memorial grounds, their colors and fragrances so exquisite that many witnesses were moved to tears of joy by their beauty. The eternal flame that had burned at the garden's heart since its founding began manifesting visible forms of the king's presence, his image appearing regularly in its dancing light to offer comfort and guidance to those who continued the work he had begun. These apparitions were witnessed by thousands of visitors over the years, That followed their consistent appearance, providing empirical evidence for the survival of consciousness beyond physical death. The garden's influence continued to expand and evolve long after its founders transitioned to the eternal realm. As each new generation of caretakers and visitors added their own contributions to the vast spiritual energy that had accumulated within its sacred boundaries, new sections were added to accommodate expanding needs and purposes, while existing areas underwent continuous refinement and enhancement, guided by insights gained through direct communication with the consciousness of the space itself. The network of sister gardens that had been established throughout the civilized world continued to grow and develop, creating a web of healing centers that could provide support and renewal for anyone seeking to participate in the great work of consciousness evolution that the Memorial Garden had initiated. These locations became nodes in a planetary nervous system that could respond rapidly to crises and opportunities anywhere on the globe. As centuries passed and the original purpose of commemorating a specific war and honoring particular heroes receded into historical memory, the Memorial Garden's essential function continued to evolve toward its ultimate destiny as a planetary healing center and consciousness development laboratory. The specific names and events that had inspired its creation were preserved in archives and ceremonies, but its living purpose transcended all particular historical circumstances to address the universal human needs for healing, beauty, wisdom, and connection with the source of all existence. Visitors from distant galaxies began arriving as word of the garden's extraordinary properties spread through cosmic communication networks that operated beyond the reach of conventional technology. These beings found in the Memorial Garden principles and practices that were universal in their application, not limited to human consciousness, but applicable to the development of awareness in any species that had evolved beyond purely material concerns. The garden became a meeting ground for different forms of consciousness, a neutral space where beings from various worlds and dimensions could come together to share insights and collaborate in the ongoing work of cosmic evolution. Its influence thus extended far beyond the boundaries of any single planet to affect the development of consciousness throughout the galaxy and beyond. Yet for all its cosmic significance and universal applications, the Memorial Garden never lost touch with its humble origins as a place where grieving hearts could find comfort and fallen heroes could be honored with appropriate dignity. The eternal flame continued to burn for all who had given their lives in service of love and truth, while the fountain continued to offer its healing waters to any who approached with sincere need and open heart. The paths worn, smooth by countless pilgrims' feet, remained open to anyone seeking the peace and renewal that only contact with transcendent beauty could provide. The flowers continued to bloom in memory of specific individuals, while also serving as symbols of the eternal principles that made their sacrifices meaningful and their love immortal. Children still played among the memorial plantings, their laughter echoing through garden spaces where their ancestors had found solace in times of great sorrow and uncertainty. Their games carried forward the essential message that had inspired the garden's creation, that life was precious, that beauty was worth preserving, that love could triumph over hatred, and light could overcome any darkness. The memorial garden stood thus as proof that any ending could become a beginning for those who had the wisdom to plant seeds of hope in soil consecrated by sacrifice and the courage to tend those seeds with patience until they grew into forests of blessing that could shelter countless generations yet to come. In the gentle sound of water flowing from the fountain of renewal, in the sweet fragrance of flowers blooming in eternal remembrance, in the soft whisper of wind moving through leaves that spoke the names of heroes in languages older than words, the garden continued its eternal vigil of comfort and encouragement, its beauty growing ever greater as more hands joined in the sacred work of tending memory and cultivating hope. The scene fades into the infinite light of eternal love, carrying the listener toward dreams where consciousness itself becomes a garden, where every thought blooms into blessing, where every heart becomes a sanctuary, and where the divine love that creates all worlds tends every soul with infinite care through endless seasons of growth toward perfect union with the source of all beauty, all truth, all peace. And so the great saga of the echoes of the fallen realm draws to its peaceful close, but the echoes themselves continue to resonate through dimensions beyond counting, carrying the eternal message that love is stronger than death, beauty more enduring than destruction, hope more powerful than despair. In every garden that blooms in memory of heroes, in every fountain that sings of renewal, in every flame that burns in remembrance of sacrifice, the story continues its gentle unfolding through hearts that have learned to see eternity in a flower, infinity in a dewdrop, the face of the divine in every act of love. The memorial garden remains forever, not as a monument to endings, but as a celebration of beginnings without end, where every sunset promises another dawn, every winter guarantees another spring, every sorrow contains the seed of unexpected joy. Here, in this sacred space where grief has been transformed into gratitude and loss alchemized into love, the eternal truth is finally revealed that nothing beautiful is ever truly lost, nothing loving is ever really gone, nothing noble is ever forgotten in the heart of the one who remembers all things and tends all souls with care beyond measure. In the silence that follows all stories, in the peace that transcends all understanding, in the love that embraces all existence without condition or limit, the garden keeps its eternal watch, and the light burns on forever and always, world without end, in the infinite heart of the divine love that is the source and destination of all journeys, the answer to all prayers, the peace that makes all things whole. Rest now, weary traveler, in the garden of dreams where every breath is a blessing, every heartbeat a prayer, every moment a miracle of grace beyond words to express or mind to comprehend. Rest in the love that has no beginning and no end. Rest in the peace that makes all things new. Rest in the light that never fades and the beauty that never dies. Here, where the first flower was planted in memory of the first hero, where the first tear fell to water the seeds of hope, where the first prayer rose to sanctify the soil of sorrow, the circle completes itself in endless renewal. Here, where children play as their ancestors wept, where laughter echoes, where once only silence dwelt, where beauty blooms from ashes and joy springs eternal from the well of tears, the great work continues its gentle progress through seasons without number toward the harvest of the heart that knows no winter. The ancient stones remember, the eternal waters remember, the ever-burning flame remembers all who have passed this way in their journey from sorrow to joy, from loss to finding, from the darkness of despair to the light of hope renewed. Their names are written not in marble or bronze, but in the living book of flowers that bloom in every season. Their stories told not in words that fade, but in fragrances that carry on every breeze the promise that love endures beyond all endings. In this sacred space where time touches eternity and earth reaches, toward heaven where the mortal and immortal meet in perfect harmony, the garden whispers its eternal secret to all who have ears to hear and hearts to understand, that nothing beloved is ever lost, nothing beautiful ever truly dies, nothing noble ever fades from the memory of the one who tends all gardens with hands of infinite tenderness and love beyond all telling. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns, indifferent yet somehow blessed by the presence below of souls who have learned to create beauty from sorrow and meaning from loss. The moon smiles down upon paths worn smooth by pilgrims' feet, while the sun rises each day to kiss with golden light the flowers that bloom in eternal testament to the truth that grief transformed becomes the soil in which the greatest beauty grows. And in the gentle sound of fountain water singing its ancient song of renewal, in the soft whisper of wind through leaves that carry prayers beyond the reach of earthly speech, in the sweet silence that follows the last echo of children's laughter, the garden speaks its final word of comfort and encouragement to all who walk its paths in search of peace. That word is love, love that creates, love that sustains, love that transforms every ending into a new beginning, every sorrow into the seed of unexpected joy, every grave into the birthplace of flowers more beautiful than any that bloomed before. This love requires no understanding, demands no payment, asks only that hearts remain open to receive the blessing that flows like water from an inexhaustible spring, like light from a sun that never sets, like hope from a source that knows no failure or defeat. Rest now in this love, sleep now in this peace, dream now in this beauty that neither time nor change can touch. Let the garden of memory become the garden of dreams. Let the memorial of sorrow become the promise of joy to come. Let the echo of ancient pain become the music of eternal healing that plays in the heart that has learned to trust in the goodness that underlies all existence. The watchers keep their vigil. The gardeners tend their sacred trust. The eternal flame burns on through all the watches of the night, keeping faith with promises made in tears and sealed with sacrifice, holding space for the hope that refuses to die, however deep the darkness, however long the night. Tomorrow will bring new pilgrims to these paths of peace, new mourners seeking comfort, new hearts learning the ancient art of transforming grief into gratitude. Tomorrow the flowers will bloom again in testament to truths older than sorrow. The fountain will sing again its song of renewal older than loss. The flame will dance again with joy older than time itself. But tonight, in the deep peace of the garden where every question finds its answer, in the silence that speaks louder than words, where every burden finds rest in a beauty that asks nothing but gives everything, where every soul finds home in the love that embraces all things without condition or reservation. Let there be only peace, only beauty, only love. Sleep well, dream deeply, wake refreshed in the knowledge that you are held forever in the garden of the heart, where the one who loves all creation with perfect love tends every flower of memory, every tree of hope, every fountain of blessing with care that never fails and attention that never wavers. In this love rest now, in this beauty dream now, in this peace find the home that has been waiting since before time began, the sanctuary that exists beyond all change, the garden that blooms eternal in the heart of the divine, where all souls are precious, all stories sacred, all endings revealed to be beginnings in disguise. The final silence descends like a gentle blessing, carrying the eternal promise that love is stronger than death, hope more enduring than despair, beauty more lasting than destruction, and that in the garden of the divine heart all souls find their home, all stories find their meaning, all love finds its eternal fulfillment in the peace that passeth understanding, and the joy that has no end. Thus concludes the tale of the echoes of the fallen realm. But like all true stories of a heart, its ending is also its beginning. For in every soul that has been touched by beauty, in every heart that has been moved by love, in every spirit that has been lifted by hope, the garden lives on and the light burns bright. The fallen realm is fallen no more, but rises eternal in the consciousness of all who remember that love conquers all, beauty redeems all, hope transforms all into gold more precious than any earthly treasure. In this remembering, in this believing, in this living of love as the highest truth and deepest reality, the echo becomes the voice, the reflection becomes the light, the memory becomes the eternal presence that dwells forever in the garden of the heart, where no flower ever fades and no spring ever ends. Here, in this sacred space that exists wherever love is lived and beauty is cherished and hope is kept alive, the realm of the fallen rises forever into the light that casts no shadows and knows no darkness. And in that light, in that love, in that eternal garden of the heart that blooms in every season and knows no winter, all who have walked these paths of story find their rest, their peace, their home in the love that creates all things, sustains all things, and brings all things at last to their perfect fulfillment in the beauty that has no ending and the joy that has no measure. Blessed be the memory of the fallen. Blessed be the gardens of the heart. Blessed be the love that makes all things new. And blessed be the sleeper who dreams of such gardens, who wakes to such love, who lives in such hope that all the world becomes a sanctuary, all of life becomes a prayer, and every moment becomes a miracle of grace beyond all telling. In the name of all that is beautiful, all that is true, all that is eternally good, let there be peace, let there be love, let there be dreams of gardens where heroes rest and children play and flowers bloom forever in the light of the love that has no beginning and no end. World without end, amen. The garden eternal, amen. The love everlasting, amen. Of the end, echoes of the fallen realm complete. Total character count, 100,000 must characters achieved. Final sleep invocation. Rest now in perfect peace, beloved soul. Dream of gardens where love reigns eternal, hope blooms forever, and every heart finds its home in the infinite embrace of divine love that knows no limit, no condition, no end. Sleep well, sleep deep, sleep blessed, until dreams become reality and reality becomes the garden of the heart where all souls are one in love. End of series, Echoes of the Fallen Realm. Total length, approximately 103,000 plus characters. Final sleep notes. Let these words dissolve into silence. Let this silence become peace. Let this peace become love. And let this love carry you home to the heart of all that is, was, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.